So going booze free, you've got no chance. So I've actually had to record this YouTube in my kitchen. We're actually moving house. I tried to record it upstairs and there was no way that I could basically hide all the rubbish because we're packing boxes, getting all stuff. It's a nightmare. So we're in the kitchen. It looks decent. We've got a nice background. It's a lot more pleasant than clothes and boxes and all that stuff. But I recorded a podcast the other day and I was talking about the fact that I've decided to go booze free for about 17-18 months until my 40th birthday. And I had a wee bit of self-doubt around talking about this. And the reason being, over the years, I've done a year off of booze, 6 months, 90 days. I've done all these different things, right? And it's something that I've always been up and down with. And when Shannon found out she was pregnant with Arlo, I decided I was going to do another year. And at that point, right, one of the things that I was thinking was I want to be set up, I want to be in a great position to be a dad. And I committed to it and we got about 6 months in and I ended up drinking. And it was weird because I think back to all the other times, and at that point, one of the things that I realised was that any time I'd made a commitment where I was like, I'm not going to drink, I'm going to go booze free, it was always off the back of a big night out or something along those lines where I felt like shit and it was almost like, right, I'm just not going to drink. And I look back to even when I done the year off of booze, and one of the things that I looked back and realised was that it was at the end of a golf trip, right? We had been away for 5 days. I never drank the first 4 days. Then the last night was up to about 7 in the morning, had to play golf the next day, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So ended up doing the year. And I mean, even when I look back, how much I realised that every part of it was just stupid, because even at the end of the year, I'd booked to go to Ibiza the day I finished. So I was straight back into chaos. Like, we went to Ibiza, drinking at the pool straight away, went to Ushuaia, took pills, everything. So you're like, right away, you're right back in the mix of it. And I think about that period of time, and after I finished it, I'd obviously built an online business, which was great. It gave me so much freedom to travel, to do cool things. And there was loads of experiences I had that alcohol actually made it better. Like, for example, me and Shannon going to clubs in Berlin, like going to a lot of big football derbies, going to Boca Juniors River Plate, travelling, well, I never actually drank when I travelled to South America, that's a story I'll come on to. But going back to Argentina, red wine, all these different things. Me and Shannon started to love red wine, we love food with red wine, all these things. And that was something that for a couple of years was amazing. And then when Shannon found out we were in Arlo, I was like, right, I want to do something, I want to be in the best physical or mental headspace. So got in shape, went booze free, was about 6 months in, went on holiday. And I remember when I was on holiday, I was like, something isn't right here. I was like, I just don't feel right. And what happened was, through that period, I drank, and then I started to notice that I was just like, there's something happening here that I just don't feel right. It was like a pressure cooker building inside me. And I think that's a lot of thing that everybody thinks, like, just stopping drinking solves your problems, but it actually doesn't. It starts to show you a lot of your problems. And for me, there was a lot of shit that I had to sort, because couldn't stop overthinking, was constantly stressed, couldn't switch off for work. Probably a bit of mild anxiety that I never really was aware of. It was more like I just thought it was work being stressful. And all these things started to come up. It was a really stressful period because Arlo was born. In that period, me and Shannon were like, we want to relax, we want to take a bit of downtime, enjoy life. So we were naturally drinking a bit more wine, we were enjoying the odd, well, at that point I went to the Euros, was enjoying the odd night out with my mates. But I was like, at first it was fine. And then I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm not enjoying it. But it just kept continuing. And one of the things that's been an ever present, right? See, if you've ever known me, I have always said, I think I said in a podcast, the first podcast, last week or this week, whatever it was, I was like, one of the things that I've always said, and I've said it in podcasts through the years, at some point I'll give up alcohol. I know I will. It's always been something that I've been aware of. And I've sat in it for about 8 months, 9 months. So we were meant to be getting married in September, right? And one of the things that all I thought about through that process was, I was like, once the wedding's done, I'm going to stop. But then we had to postpone the wedding for various reasons. So that meant that we ended up getting married in March this year. We got married in the registry office, we went to Rome. Then we had a reception last month, so it was a month later. And one of the things the whole time I was like, I don't want to not drink at my wedding. That was the thing that kept playing over and over in my head. I'm like, I just can't get comfortable with the thought of not drinking at my wedding. And I said at the start of this year, I'm like, my goal's going to be to drink 4 times this year. So one of them was going to be the honeymoon, one of them was going to be the wedding. Then I had another couple of things where I was like, I could maybe drink at those. And one of the things that happened was, after the wedding passed 4 weeks ago, about 4 weeks ago, I started to notice that my thought processes were changing. And one of the questions I was asking myself was like, why do I still drink? and I couldn't answer it. And that was one of the things that me and Shannon were talking about, and she was kind of saying to me, she's like, why don't you just do a period again? And I was like, I'm not saying I'm going to do a year off of booze. I was like, I've done it once and followed through. I've done it the second time, never followed through, because I was doing it for all the wrong reasons. And I sat on it and I spoke to a couple of people I know who have successfully went booze free, and I also spoke to another couple of people who have went booze free and then went back to just drinking intermittently. And the general advice was like, do 18 months. They're like, commit to 18 months, but don't do it as in don't do it in the way that you've done before where you're trying to run away from booze. They're like, what's your reasons? When I told them, they're like, you're doing it for the right reasons. And that was something that was in my head. I was like, I know it's different now, because for me, right, my reasoning now is I'm a dad. For me, the early days of Arlo being born, I really struggled with. I struggled to adapt to the change, how much my life had changed, how much the things that I could do had changed. It was something that I definitely struggled with, because I was going through a transition in business, I was going through a big personal transition. There was all these different things happening, and for me, one of the big things, I'm like, I always said I don't want Arlo to grow up around a lot of alcohol. Not, by the way, not because I think alcohol is bad, and I always thought to myself, I don't really want to be a dad who's drunk that much around him. I grew up in an environment where my granddad was an alcoholic. I didn't enjoy being around him. Me and Shannon both agreed. We both agreed when we were younger. We didn't really like being around drunk people that much. We found it a bit uncomfortable. So one of the things that we said was like, well, we don't want him to be like that. And obviously when we get the wedding up the road, I was a bit like, cool, what's stopping me now? Like, and by the way, I don't think there's anything wrong with drinking around your kids, being drunk around your kids. It's just a personal decision for me. And it's probably just due to my upbringing, probably stuff that I've felt that I thought, I don't really want that for him. Like, I'm happy to make the changes. When it comes to training, I've got some goals like Ironman, stuff like that I want to do. I really enjoy training, how much alcohol impacts it. Like for me, one of the things that I value more than anything is just being in good shape. And for me, I know that any time alcohol gets involved, naturally I end up gaining a wee bit of weight. I still train, I don't stop training. So it doesn't stop me in that sense, but I don't feel good, I don't enjoy it as much, and it just doesn't feel like I'm very driven with progress in training, with getting fitter, achieving. And for me, I'm like, I know that I can't achieve like an Ironman goal. I want to run a sub 3 hour marathon as well. Those kind of goals, they're just not going to happen if I'm drinking. Now, last thing for me is I'm launching a new business, and it's like, so why would I drink when I'm trying to do that? Because I know how stressful business is. So like in terms of regulating your emotions, dealing with stress, overthinking, confidence, all these different things. And I know that those are the biggest things that will impact business for me. And for me, it's like, well, why don't you make sure that you're managing those things in the correct way? And this is something I do see a lot with guys, and it's something to see, especially guys with business. They're like, oh, I'm just fucking stressed all the time. It's just one of the things. And I'm like, nah, well, you can actually change it, mate. It's in your power to change it. Because quite often, like, stress, overthinking, all these different things, like, just because that's happening, it doesn't give you a buy. Because a lot of guys get angry, they start acting like arseholes, they can be dicks to their family. And for me, I'm like, I know that that's a tendency that I would have if I wasn't smart and looked after myself. Start getting shot with people. And it's like, for me, I'm like, I don't want to be that dad. And I'm like, I look and I'm like, what's the number one thing that would start to impact? So family life for me, training, work, and it's alcohol. It's like, that's the one big thing that's a constant that always, always, always leaves you in that place where things don't feel the way they should. Cause a lot more stress, cause a lot more, stress, overthinking, all these different things. And it's like, what's the point in doing that if that's what's going to happen as a result? And for me, that's when I'm like, cool, let's do 18 months, let's see. And the reason why I never said like I'm going to go completely sober is because I am not 100%, and that's what me and Shannon were talking about. I was like, this is the time where I make the decision, am I going sober, or will I always say that alcohol is something I want to have in my life? Because I do love red wine, I enjoy it, but I know that when I start drinking it, I've got a tendency to want to keep drinking. For me, I don't really want to do that. I don't, as again I've said with Arlo, it's just something that I'm like, I don't want to be around that. Then the knock-on effect that has and everything, and I'm like, well cool, let's do this 18-month period and see where I land at the end of it. And the reason why I did choose 18 months, right, I know that, see when you start to make any kind of change, right, so see, we'll just say what it is, right, see when you change identity, when you're trying to change how you view yourself, your results, right, you see if I'm going to use a fat loss example, right, or a getting in shape example, because it's the easiest one. look at people who get in shape in like 12 weeks, right? And what happens, right, is they change the external, so they change how they look. But what happens, right, is they've not actually changed anything internal. So they get in shape and then the same patterns are still running in their brain. So like, see that lack of confidence, and what they've done is they've tried to force it at a, like being in a place of feeling shit. So what happens is you move away from that, right? You start to make a bit of progress, but then see, because you still, deep down, right, you still probably do feel shit about yourself, you still lack confidence. So what happens, right, is when you start to make any kind of mistake, you start to go backwards. And see, when people go through a process of change, so see something like getting in shape, it actually takes about 18 months for you to completely change how you view yourself. So everybody's doing these 12-week transformations, getting a quick change, right, but they don't realise that it actually takes 18 months for you to get those results to stick. So for me, it was like, cool. I remember as I was going through the year wasn't long enough. I remember at the end of the year, as soon as I started drinking again, that whole thing of not making a mistake, because that wasn't, it was in my head, but as soon as I started to go back to old habits, because I hadn't actually changed mentally in terms of how I viewed the whole process, as soon as I drank, it just went boom, and I was back in those old thought processes. And that for me, I'm like, well, I need to make sure that I go through a longer process. And for me, like, is the long-term goal at this moment probably not to drink again? Potentially it is. I think as I say this, and one of the things, as I said, I had a bit of self-doubt around posting this, because I remember I've said I'm going to do a year again, never followed through. I remember at one point I said I was going to stop drinking completely, never followed through, but I've also done loads of periods of 6 months, 90 days and a year. So it's one of those things where I was like, I don't want to steam in and say this again, but the thing that I realised, I'm like, without committing, I'm never going to do it. And that was one of the things in my head. I'm like, you need to just commit. And this is something I speak with a lot of guys. I was actually speaking to somebody last week, and this was, no, it was maybe 2-3 weeks ago. And this was one of the triggers. See, as I was going through the process after the wedding, I started to think, should I do this? And he said to me, he was like, mate, I don't even enjoy drinking anymore. I'd like to just stop. And I was like, well, what stops you then? And he's like, I'm not really sure. And it was almost, see, as I asked the question, I'm like, I think that's the question I had to hear. Because that's one of the things that I've realised. I'm like, I don't really enjoy this anymore. Like, see, people are like, I just love getting out and getting mad with it. I am not that person. Like, the enjoyment in that for me went away a long time ago, but it's something that I still noticed that I would do just through habit, really. And for me, I'm like, well, I want to break the habit in terms of I just don't want it to really be a thing. I've got other things I want to focus on. And for me, that was why I thought, when I thought about doing this, I was like, I'm actually going to, would I say, blog the whole journey? Because see, when I done the year, another reason why I knew I was doing it for the wrong reasons, right? See, I basically just posted on social media 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, all the way up to 12. And it was more just for people to be like, oh look, if he's doing that, oh there's fucking 50 likes, 100 likes, whatever it is. Whereas this time it's for a totally different reason. I know I'm doing it for the right reasons. I know I'm doing it because I want to be a better dad. I want to show up better for my family. I want to build a cracking business. I want to do an Ironman or something like that in the near future. And for me, I'm doing it for positive reasons, not for negative reasons. Like, the thought of like not drinking doesn't faze me, and it's weird because I know 100% that I'll do it. I remember when I signed up to the year the first time, I knew I would follow through. I remember saying to somebody, they're like, you'll never do it. And I was like, trust me, mate, in my head it's done already. And then I remember the second time, the time I didn't do it, I remember that time, if I look back now from my experience in my head, I'm like, I was never fully in. Whereas this time, I'm like, as I sit, I'm like, I know 100% I'm going to do it. And it's a big, bold claim. I could end up looking like a fanny, but I know I won't. I am 100% in on it. The decision's made. And I know that I'll see it through, but it all comes from a place of knowing what I'm trying to get to. And I think a lot of things that, through this one, I want to show people the struggles and challenges and the thought processes and all the things that happens, because I know so many people are almost curious about drinking less, but a lot of people don't really know how to navigate it. They don't know the challenges. And I remember, for me, the trigger. So obviously it was we were away on the golf trip. After that, I was like, I'm going to do this, but I'd been thinking about it and it's funny because that's another thing that popped into my head with this. I was like, I was thinking about that for so long before I committed, and it's the exact same with this. And for me, I should have blogged the whole process. And there's a lot of things that people will learn, and a lot of challenges, struggles that people don't understand. And that's the part that, because I know how curious people are about it. And it might not be never drinking again, because I'll be honest, right, I think for about 90 to 95% of people, the goal should never be not to drink again. I actually think that for a lot of people is why they keep ending up drinking, because they make rash decisions, say I'm never drinking again, then they do it. Their confidence gets lower all the time because they keep fucking up. Whereas I think for a lot of people, it should be committing to these periods to learn about yourself. Because see, when you do it right, you will learn so much about yourself. When you take booze away, right, you'll start to see where you fall short. Like, see if you can't deal with stress, if you lack confidence when bevy isn't there, maybe, I don't know, maybe you're not happy. It could be maybe you're not happy in your job, maybe you're not happy in a relationship, you're not happy with your life. All these things start to show up, but a lot of people get scared of this stuff. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people need to start to navigate. Because it is easy, see when you're bevying a lot, just to ignore things. And that's what I think happens with a lot of people. They just ignore. They don't actually take stock of where they're at. And I'll talk about everything, see all the stuff that's coming up for me, because my thought process behind this whole idea is like, it's 18 months, and whether I'll do a video a week, every couple of weeks, my whole thought process is I want a library to build up of the journey. See, so people can actually see the journey, because it's yes, in my head I'm like, right, I've done it. But I know that won't be the case as I go through it. I know there'll be struggles and challenges. And I think a lot of people want to set these big goals and it just to feel easy. And it's like, you're going to need to go through self-doubt. And a big thing that stopped me with the year, I think I was about to make this point actually 5 minutes ago and I went off on a tangent. I kept putting off because of events. I've got this event, I've got that event. And I kept delaying because of it. Well, I've got this social event on, I've got this thing, I've got a holiday. And for me, events, I just went, fuck it, and I had to go to, I had 2 weddings, I travelled South America. What else? There was a couple of other parties and stuff through it. And for me, like, when you put yourself in the position, then you need to learn to deal with these things. And that's a big thing. Like, for example, I've got a guy who, he's in the programme, right? And he notices that, see, any time he drinks, he just careers off track. He can end up not training for 2, 3, 4 weeks. And for me, I was like to him, mate, I think you should commit to a prolonged period. Because he's in this in-between where he says he doesn't want to, but he's so non-committal that anytime something happens, he ends up gone, then he ends up in his own head. And I'm like, mate, you're just not committing. You're always giving yourself an out. And that's what I was realising I was doing. It's like, I'm going to do it at some point, I just don't know when. And the wedding for me was always the blocker. That's something I realised after it. But it's like, I know I'm going to do it. And it's like, well, do it then. Don't keep saying it. Put your money where your mouth is. And I think this is for a lot of guys. It's like, talk is cheap. You can say you're going to do all these things, but it's like, commit to it and actually follow it through. Because that's where you learn about yourself. That is, guys are brilliant. Guys love podcasts, books, all these different things, motivational videos. And what a lot of people don't realise, right, is see when it comes to change, committing to doing something really hard will give you far more than any book, podcast or motivational video. Because see, for example, in this, right, the first few weeks will feel easy. And then see when you're in that middle period towards 6 months, it will feel horrendous. It will just become a grind where you're like, this is getting harder. And then you commit the other side of that. That's what change is like in any level, and this is what a lot of people don't realise. There's a thing actually called the cycle of change. It's a process, and there's a part of it that is called the Valley of Despair, where you will literally hate everything. And that is the part where most people patch it because they think it's not meant to feel like that. Every single big change is meant to feel horrendously hard. Really confusing, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of questioning why you're doing it. That is normal. But nobody talks about this, because everywhere you see these motivational videos like, grinding it out, like, I don't struggle. It kills my soul sometimes, because it just gives guys such a false thing of what change actually feels like. But mate, see if you are somebody who this is something that's always looked in your mind, think about it. Like, think about commit. And like, it doesn't, like, I've obviously done a year, right? 18 months is a big jump, and I know that it's the next step for me. For you, mate, it could be like 90 days. I do think, I think personally, I think 6 months is better, because 6 months forces you to start to have to deal with the fact that, see 90 days, right, you can muscle it 90 days by just having boring weekends. But see when you do a prolonged period, so let's see for me looking at 18 months, me and Shannon actually sat the other day and we wrote a huge list of all the things we can do at the weekends that don't involve alcohol. Every single thing, and it's like, cool, how can we start putting these in? because that's where 90 days, right, and this is what I learned this before, see when you just do 90 days, you will just sit bored half the time because you know it's going to come to an end after 90 days, but the problem is you just go back to doing what you always done at the end of that. So it's something to think about, mate. But if anybody's got any thoughts about it, anybody wants to ask any questions about it, like fire me a message. Obviously I've got a lot of experience in terms of like 90 days, 6 months, a year. I've also got a lot of experience in terms of fuck ups, how to navigate the mental process of when you feel like you're going backwards and you're fucking up. It's one of the biggest things. It's the thing that fucks most people. The minute they do something wrong, they implode, and that's a huge thing. And how to navigate those times, because that's probably the times where people are most susceptible to just going back to normal. But the plan is, I plan on potentially maybe every week doing a video on this. Probably do 2 YouTubes a week. One of them is going to be on this topic, because I really want to talk about it as much as possible, because I know how much a thing it is to people. I know a lot of people don't talk about it. A lot of people kid on that they love getting mad at it when they actually don't. They know if they say anything about it, they'll get slagged off all their mates. I'm at the age now, it's funny, see for me, like see when you have a kid and you've got a family, you've got a business. Like I remember in the last year, there was a point where I remember I used to be like, oh, what if I don't drink, what will people think and all that. There's a point you just go, I don't actually care. Like the only people that should matter in your thought process is, see if you get kids or anything like that, is like, what does your missus think of you, what do your kids think of you, not what your mates think of you. And that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with. And for me, it was like one of the decisions where I'm like, I don't actually care. People can slaughter me all they want, people could slag me. I'm like, I genuinely don't care. See if I show up better for my family have a better life as a result. That's all that matters. But again, mate, hit subscribe. It means that you'll get notified when these go live. Everything will be on here. As always, jump my email list, whatever it is. My podcast will be there. I've got a daily podcast where it's like a 5-minute daily. It'll be anything to do with habits, behaviours, mindset, motivation, consistency, discipline, all these different topics. Hit subscribe, mate. You'll get updated with both constantly, and I will see you next week.